All right, we're going to get started. I call this meeting of the Winthrop School Board to order. Please join me in rising for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Paul, for helping us with that troubleshooting. All right, roll call. We have all of our board members here except for our student representatives who will be arriving late while they are at a match today. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Okay, I do have an adjustment. We're going to add a board discussion under 7, it'll be 7.5. regarding policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. Are there any other adjustments?
No.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Winthrop School Board meeting of May 1st, 2024, as written.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Moving on to public comment. Are there any comments in the room or on Zoom? Yes.
Do you want me to?
Please.
Is there someone on Zoom call?
I'm admitting.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were saying this.
Oh, you should.
I just have two really quick things. Actually, the first one I'll pass out and you can pass it around. So the first couple of things are in regards to volunteers at the grade school. We've had some conversations around that at the board level. And we have been really thinking about how can we increase that and what can we do to be more a better communicator and connected to the community. We just had pre-K screening and we put that in as part of our welcome packet and letting people know that, you know, we are looking to have as many people come in to volunteer and to connect with us. So I wanted to let you know that the colorful piece was part of the volunteer packet and also the guidelines, and then there's another document that's not part of that, but it's the application document. And we're also going to include that in our mass mailings in the fall so that all families that are already here and not registering will receive that too. So I just wanted to share with you that we have been listening and trying to think about how we could do a better job at that. So that's that. And then I just wanted to give a big shout out to our PTA at the grade school and the Hassenfuss family. So PTA had such nice surprises all week last week for teacher appreciation. We had the sunrise bagels one day, Ted's trackside. They had a coffee and snack cart. The volunteers did all of this and they went around and delivered to each classroom with the coffee and snack cart. It was the day we had My Tribe Nutrition teas that were delivered, and all of it was sponsored by the Hassenfuss family. So it was very, very sweet, lots of volunteers in, and Mr. Hassenfuss himself was blippy one day with the coffee cart. He said he thought probably teachers thought the coffee wasn't worth the disruption he was creating. But it was just a lot of fun, and we felt so appreciated, and I just wanted to give all of them a big shout out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Are there any other public starting with our superintendent report.
Okay, I sent mine out in the packet, and I think notes or other additional information that I need to add are on the agenda, so I'll talk about it when it comes up on the agenda. I do want to say that over the next 2 or 3 meetings, you will see a fair number of resignations, and obviously be a fair number of hirings as well. I don't think that you should be terribly alarmed. There's lots of reasons why people are looking. For instance, on tonight's agenda, we accept the resignation for Deb Roderick, who's been our assistant principal for the last 2 years, and 3 years, sorry. Hope she, don't tell her I did that. But yeah, she is leaving to become a principal at a big school in Lewiston. So we're very, very sad to lose her, but very happy for her. And there are a number of other people who are talking to me and to their administrators about different things that they're looking at, like relocating closer to home, maybe for more money, maybe because we have one person who you don't know about yet who's leaving high school she's going to stay home with her 2 children, something she's always wanted to do. And so there's lots of reasons. I don't get a sense that people are leaving because they're like, oh, I have to get out of Winthrop. It's not that way at all. So just keep that in mind as you see, sadly, a number of names come across your desk or your paper over the next 2 or 3 meetings. And something for you to think about. Next meeting on the agenda will be what we've done forever for me, but it's not required. Especially right now with the hiring process in full swing everywhere. The school board has voted to give me the authority to issue contracts first. It doesn't change the reality that we have to nominate. They have to come to you. You have to vote on them here. But typically, issuing a contract is the 3rd step, and especially with 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, but with just 2 meetings, a lot of times it's about who says yes first. So that'll be on there for you to consider at the next meeting. Oh, and one last thing on here, and I put this a little bit in my superintendent's report. This may seem a little weird, which is why I'm explaining it a little bit more. Brooklyn Gagnon, was on last month's agenda, appointed to the administrative assistant position for special education. We have subsequently have a vacancy for the same position at the middle school, which is where she's done a ton of work over the last couple of years. She graduated 4 years ago, I think. So when she found out about the middle school vacancy, she asked if we could consider transferring her over there, and talked to Sue Fawcett and Lori. Lori very much wants her there. She's basically finishing out this year for us and is amazing. So we are transferring her over to the middle school.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions from the board? Okay, moving on to our chair report. Let's see. I did want to give a shout out to the Lego robotics team. Last Saturday they had their full day track meet, and they took a 2nd place in the ping pong shot put. I was actually able to attend in my parental capacity, and it was really neat to see. I also learned that Mr. Esterbrooks, who heads it up with Mrs. McKenzie, a teacher at the middle school, used to also, well, he's a parent, but he used to also have kids here, and his kids went through the program, and he actually volunteers his materials, the Legos and everything, to the students, and I thought that was very generous of him to do that. Also, we have our art show, and there's been a lot of activity. My kiddos have talked about the Velveteen Rabbit that they watched yesterday. That was a big hit. 4th graders went to the Portland Symphony Orchestra. I'm just loving all of these opportunities for the kids. And We are going to talk about the comprehensive survey that's a discussion on our agenda. I did have a meeting with Megan and Jim. I know the administration has worked really hard on putting this together and gathering the information. We'll hear from Megan about that process. And I've emailed the board already, but several hiring committee opportunities, social studies at the high school, they're have a hiring committee for that, and also position at the grade school for the assistant principal. Also, I attended town council on Tuesday to go over the budget. Jim spoke to that a bit in his superintendent report. And I believe that wraps it up for the chair report. Any questions from the board? Okay, moving on to our committee reports, starting with finance.
We did not meet.
Policy?
We did not meet. I believe we will have those two policies on next week's, or no?
We've been through 2 weeks.
Oh, well then, we did not meet.
Thank you. Negotiations?
Good. The only meeting we've had is I met with 2 of the negotiators to just review all of the stipends, and the way stipends are done is through a formula, and not everything was formulated. I don't know if that's the correct use of that word, but we met and we have gone through that whole process. And one of the things that was sort of interesting, this happened actually one of the last times we met as a whole group, is that the association came with a pretty lengthy list of stipends, and I was like, God, that's a lot of stipends. And they said, well, these are the stipends we found out are being paid right now, but are not in the contract. I said, okay, I guess we better put those in there then. So we've done that. It's going well. It's just taking a long time.
Thank you. The administrator reports are attached. Does the board have any questions regarding those? I know I have written down some. Monica?
I'm curious about the size of our incoming class in the grade school.
So for pre-K, we can enroll up to 48. Right now, we have 31 pre-K and 5 new K. So we're still down a little bit because generally at this time, or not last year, but in years prior to last year, we used to have waiting lists of like 15 to 18 kids waiting after the 48 number, and we haven't even reached like 35 yet. So we're hoping, and we have that out in several places and encouraging people to make sure that they, let people know that we did have the screening, but it doesn't mean that we're not still accepting students.
Thank you.
Jim?
I just want to add to that. We also traditionally have not accepted any superintendent agreements, and we've had some inquiries. We wait till after the initial screening, so we probably have 3 or 4 people waiting for superintendent agreements to come to us. That'll help add to that number. But as Julie just said, when we used to have our own waiting list, we couldn't accept superintendent's agreements because we have to make room for our own students first.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board regarding reports? Okay. I did have a couple of questions. Let's see. The Winthrop grade school, I was wondering what a build-a-bug box is.
So that was actually constructed out of paper. It was and it was all mathematical, so they had to do equations as a family and then build that as a family. They weren't actual bugs or an actual cage that bugs could be put into. And Mrs. Bourne said that. She goes, I made it very clear that I had no real bugs and that they were not going to be real bugs, she said, because some of them were so exciting they were building a bug box. So it was just an activity to bring families together, and it was centered around math.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The kindness tree. By the way, I keep seeing that, and it's beautiful. I love it. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's absolutely lovely with the hands. Yes.
volunteer opportunities. So I am seeing those, even before you had got up to the podium and spoke, so I do appreciate that. Mhm. And then you talked about a 6 months of professional development with Strength in Me. Is that for teachers and administration as well?
It is. So we're in the process right now of putting together a leadership team, which will consist, the invite went out from me to the entire staff. So when I say educators in, when I refer to educators, it's anyone who works for Winthrop grade school, because we're all educators. And so the invite went out to all, if they were interested in becoming part of the leadership team. And there was an email that had like the acronym of leadership and what I believe that leadership meant with acronym definitions of each letter. And then I asked for interest, and those who returned the interest, then it went back out with very specific expectations. One of the biggest ones was positivity, and also very dedicated and time commitment. And then once they had received that email at the very end, it said, so are you still interested and why? And so everyone that was still interested wrote back and explained why they were interested and what they were going to bring. Like I just said why, and many of them said why they were interested and what they thought they could bring to that leadership team. And Strength in Me is at the state of Maine level. They've been working with Debbie, myself, Christy, and Maureen to help us get staff all on a united front. This year, like it was for, I think, many places, very challenging, and we saw some divides amongst staff. And so I wanted help and support in order to improve that. And we reached out to Strength in Me, and they've been consulting with the four of us initially so that we could understand what they were bringing to the table and who they were. We actually meet again with them on Monday, I believe it is. They have been like the most wonderful support. And in saying that, the last time we met with them, I talked to them about the leadership team that I was envisioning and, like to empower people, right? And so they offered 6 months of leadership training, and it's all free. And so the leadership team will meet twice a month starting in August. One of those meetings will be with Strength in Me, and they have the whole outline. I don't have anything to do with planning that, setting that up, anything. They have themed topics for each month that they will give to us and present to us as professional development to help foster that leadership team. And then the other half of that time is going to be what we need to be for us, and also a book study on Brene Brown, who has written many books on leadership, not specific to education, but leadership, and one of her books is called Dare to Lead. And so we'll be doing a book study on that. But I want the staff to be empowered. I want the staff, there are so many natural leaders, and to me it's not about what your position is, it's the fact that we're all educators. So it's bringing that group of people together. And right now I haven't gone to the next step yet as far as planning those first meetings, but those are the steps that have happened so far. So I'm very excited about it. If you can't tell, I'll stop talking.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about that a little bit, and thank you for being proactive. It's really great. Does the board have any questions? Follow-up questions? Okay. Okay. So this is for Jay, the high school report. So I'm curious about Monmouth Academy and Marina Cook High School to discuss a pilot program where we offer courses to students.
Yeah, So exciting opportunity for 3 local small schools that sort of don't really work together. All of us offering, different things kind of in a vacuum. All schools trying to offer really diverse courses for our student body. So I've kind of taken the lead to meet with those principals. We met a couple of weeks ago at Cook, and we talked about some courses that we might have in common, and that we don't have in common that our students or their students might be interested in taking, either in person, virtually, or in some kind of a hybrid form, and looking at sort of dipping our toe in the water with a few of those courses, and potentially putting those out there to kids, more so on the beginning and the end of the day, so that, our schedules are all a little bit different, but they're the most common sort of at either the beginning or the end. So we've identified some of those courses, and as we design our schedules, hopefully we can put some of those opportunities out to kids, where we can share resources and take the year and see how it goes.
Thank you very much. I love that idea. Monica, do you have a question?
Yes, what are some of the courses that you're considering?
So we talked a little bit about courses like digital photography, video, which we offer, potentially some EP courses like chemistry, biology. There's an outdoor science course that Monmouth teaches that we talked about. We offer AP statistics, not all the other schools do. And the upper levels of calculus. So those are some of those really specialized courses that tend to be small that we're looking at.
Thank you. Do you envision that this will be kind of a remote, that they'll kind of remote into the classroom?
I think each course is different. We talked about calculus, for example. It's one that's hard to do remotely. We talked about our coaching principles course. That one could be a hybrid, but when we have a speaker that, we'd like the kids from Monmouth, for example, to come, they wouldn't have to be there all the time. And other classes, where they possibly could be remote. So we're working on that. We'll land on a few, and then we'll put it out there to kids and families, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from the board? Perfect. I appreciate the calendars too that you guys have attached. Those are very helpful. Is Sue on by any chance?
No.
Okay. All right, that concludes my questions. Anything else from the board as far as questions for the administrator reports? Okay. We'll move on to our old business, starting with our discussion regarding buses.
Good evening. So I'll start off by telling you that I just forwarded to your emails the latest Maine State Police inspection reports from the electric buses just moments ago. The electric buses came back to us a week or so ago after being back at the factory for 3 months. Supposedly the line went through them bumper to bumper, corrected all the issues that had been noted in the past. They were delivered here, and a couple of days ago, this week, Maine State Police Inspection Unit came out and failed them all. For a number of reasons that you will see noted on the yellow scanned inspection reports that I've sent you, but I will give you the quick rundown. Several of them had faulty emergency exits. Several of them had electrical faults. Several of them had heater faults. One of them had a diesel leak, ironically, in the diesel tank that supplies fuel to the heating system. So basically, when the buses came here off the delivery trucks, one of their technicians followed closely behind and spent the better part of a day and a half, plus or minus, going through them, taking a look at them before the state police even came. The the technician corrected a number of issues that he found, which, take it for what it is, they arrived back here after 3 months with issues that the technician had to fix. He did as much as he could. The state police came the next day, went through and said, nope, 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 nope. All 4 of them taken out of service. So, needless to say, there were conversations that needed to be had between the technician and the inspectors, because they both sort of came at me with, well, why did they fail? Why did they fail them? Why did they fail them? And then, you know, the inspectors were coming back to me like, well, why can't this guy get this stuff sorted out? So I said, look, as of this morning, I put the head of the inspection team in touch with the head of the technicians team. And I said, you guys need to, in order to prevent and reduce miscommunication and confusion and so forth, to make it any worse than it already is, you guys really should be communicating directly. And they were sort of like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So I put them in touch. They had a conversation this morning. The technician did follow up with me and say that he has set a time to meet with the head of the inspection unit at our bus yard where they will go through the vehicles together. I don't know what that date is because this was just a quick text exchange with him, but supposedly the technician is coming back tomorrow, so I hope to get that further information from him. Additionally, we've also discovered that now that the buses are back, of course we've tried to plug them in, 2 of the chargers have failed. Obviously they're under warranty, and both myself and the line technician have spent several hours on the phone with ADB Tech Support. ADB is the company that makes them, to no avail. They basically told us, yeah, they'll probably, I'm paraphrasing here, but they basically said they'll probably start working again at some point. And I said, well, this isn't quite really how it works. And then they said, well, you know, the batteries are pretty much already full, so the chargers probably wouldn't work anyway. And I said, well, the batteries are at 96%. They should be topping them up, and then they should be maintaining them. So I don't think that's valid. And then it was kind of like, well, we need to talk to the line technician so that we can do some diagnostic work when the technician is actually standing there. So I also put the line technician in touch with the charger technician to try to get them to communicate directly. So needless to say, it's an ongoing saga. I'm trying to just be very factual, because at this point I think, as we all have, probably developed some opinions of how this company is handling this situation, and I'm still not entirely convinced that it's a favorable outcome at this point. So, as I've said, every time I've addressed the board in the past, I think electric vehicles are wonderful. I think this program is wonderful. I think all the efforts that we've all put into this are great. Now it's sort of at the point where, pardon the pun, but where the rubber's hitting the road here, and we're going to have to make a decision as to how best to proceed. I do know that Jim of late has had a bit of an email exchange with a gentleman from the EPA. Perhaps Jim can speak on that just a bit.
Yeah, I was just sharing that with Alicia. Probably 6 weeks ago, I reached out to Dan Schutter from the Department of Education and asked him for a contact from the federal government to see what options are available to the board regarding electric buses, because as you know, they came to us for a grant program and we don't have any money expended, or not much money expended on buses. And so I just simply asked the question, what if the board decides not to put them back into service? What are our options? And did not hear back. Last week I reached out again, found out the guy that the email I was given has actually been on vacation for a lengthy period of time. But I got apparently emails are being forwarded, so I got another person who responded to me, as I was saying to Alicia, I was back in my office getting ready for tonight's meeting at 4:30. Wrote back to me, and so from the federal government, and they are planning, we're scheduling a meeting next week that will include myself, Josh, Dan Schutter from the Department of Education, and then the people from, I'm encouraged by this because this is not lying, this is not This is people who are essentially administering the grant. And it's a very large grant that's spread out over 5 years. So I will have more answers for you at our next meeting about what our options are.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Josh or Jim? Ivy?
Are you able to be available when those two groups come together to go through the buses?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. In fact, I was there with the inspection team when they were doing their first round of inspections. And the other interesting tidbit about this is that the team that came out this time was an entirely different set of eyes, completely different technicians. I will say one of them had been here once before when he was in training, but this was the first time that these two gentlemen had looked at these buses. So it wasn't as if this was a set of tired eyes that are kind of, yeah, we're gonna write these things off. Two fresh guys were both extremely competent, in my opinion, and had nothing, even with a stretch, couldn't put those vehicles in service. So to answer your question, definitely, I'll be there with them. Both of those exchanges when those happen, I'm planning to be there for that.
Awesome, thanks Josh, and thank you for all your hard work on trying to stay on top of all this and provide best answers for us to make good decisions on what we should do with the buses.
Oh, definitely, my pleasure, you're welcome. Like I said, hopefully that attachment came through your emails. If not, I can make sure that it does, but I think it was just a scanned copy of the 4. You'll note there's 4 separate pages, yellow pages, one for each of the 4 vehicles, and you'll see on each of them, if you peruse down through the columns, there's 1 or more items on each of those reports that takes the vehicle out of service. So when we say that a vehicle doesn't pass its inspection, that's essentially what that means, that it's being pulled out of service, which translates to it's not legal to use for transporting students.
Catherine?
Well, sort of building on what Ivy just said, I was just appreciating that I don't believe this is the full extent of your job, and I just appreciate the significant amount of time and hope that if what supports you need to be able to do the other part of your job, which is also important in our daily sort of efforts, and I do appreciate personally doing this because similarly, I think it'd be great if we could use electric buses, but primary safety of students takes trumps off. So I just want to say thank you, and if you need support and help with this, because it's a significant amount of time that you've invested in this, in addition to your regular job. So thank you.
Thank you for your support, appreciate that.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah, I echo those same comments. I'm curious if there are other schools that you're hearing. Do you keep in contact? Like, is this unique to us?
So, no, it is not unique to us at all. There are 11 Lion buses in the state of Maine. We have clearly 4 of them. I have kept in touch regularly with Chris Storer, who's the director down in Yarmouth, but he also happens to be the president of the Maine People Transport Association. So between Chris and Cheryl Brackett at the DOE, they're kind of our two, us being directors throughout the state, they're kind of our two conduits for communication. They put out the MAPT puts out a regular newsletter. Chris puts out regular updates. He also does community questions where he will blast out an email. If somebody asks him a question, hey, can you see how people are doing with their electric bus program, that type of thing. He can blast it out to all the directors of the state, and then we all kind of, in this case, commiserate. But we also communicate through email to kind of share answers on the things. Chris personally has 2 Lion buses in Yarmouth. Same scenario that we've experienced. His 2 buses just came back from the factory. I want to say it was the week before April break. And similar scenario, they had them for roughly 3 months. They came back, and before they could even put them out on a rail, they failed. They had mechanical failures, so they didn't even get to the point of bringing in state police for their inspections. He had a couple of drivers assigned to go through them, basically do a daily check like we would do regularly. they couldn't even get through their daily, like a DVIR check that we would do on a daily basis on these buses. So we're definitely not alone. And if you're interested, a quick Google search will literally bombard you with issues nationwide, that schools throughout the country are having similar issues with the same products. So it's bittersweet, but we're not alone. So
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
All right, all set with questions for Josh?
And another question, obviously we've been talking a lot, and the superintendent of schools in Yarmouth is a college friend of mine. We talk a lot, and I happened to see him on Friday at a Drum Woodson thing I was at, and he's sort of saying, the exact same thing that Josh is reporting to you. And I found it kind of funny. I was driving around probably about a month ago with my wife. We were driving out through Wayne, and a flatbed came by carrying a school bus, and it was one of the electric school buses at Mount Desert Island. I was like, oh my God, they're heading the wrong way. It's not good.
Monica?
So I'm not sure if this is the correct time to make the suggestion for an item for our next agenda. But it seems clear to me that we need to move on this. We're getting a lot of different information. Some oral meetings are gonna happen. It's taking up an inordinate amount of Josh's time. As both Ivy and Catherine noted, and I would like to see a discussion of returning these buses brought to the next meeting's agenda.
Thank you, Monica. Yes, during the suggested additions to future agendas, we can address that there. Moving on to our new business, starting with 7.1, a discussion regarding the roles of school board student representatives.
Well, I think I brought this to foreground, but I think we all were thinking about it, talking about it. And they're not here right now, so I don't know if we want to have our conversation. I sort of think the point of it is to also include them, so we could table it until the next meeting if they're, yeah, okay.
We can table that, yes, and I had actually did want to mention there's the policy on that BCH student board members. So board members can take a peek at that in preparation for that discussion for next time. Did you get that, Monica? Were you looking for the?
Is it in the packet here?
No, this is a policy in our handbook. It's policy BCH. Okay, moving on to 7.2, discussion regarding administrators' use of media.
So I was the one that made the suggestion that we look at this. I've been concerned. I've got a copy of a recent KJ article here. This was April 22nd. And I'm concerned that the tone is very divisive. And when I read it, it seemed very different from what I had gone through, what we had gone through. As a board. So I'm concerned not only this, but then we have also the issue of, and although I can probably thank my election to this office, thank the letter, it was, in my view, an unethical letter that was written to influence the election of board members. And so I'm concerned about that, and I want to propose that we talk about how to make sure this doesn't go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Maybe that's something that we can bring up as far as a policy and policy committee too, just to kind of review that. Was there anything in particular that stuck out from the article?
From this most recent article here, it is the article introduces itself by talking about how Superintendent Hodgkin, there was a suggestion that he be reduced to part-time to save money, and instead we reduced, where is this, 2 positions at the Winthrop Elementary School were cut, along with $500,000 from the facility. What positions at the elementary school were cut? What did I miss?
Jim, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just would say, in the initial proposal, there were 5 teachers. There were 3 at the middle school, 2 at the grade school. The 2 at the grade school never, they were in the initial cuts, so they never came here. And you want me to keep speaking about that, or you want me to reply to the things that have been said thus far?
Is that satisfactory, that response? So I think what Jim's referring to is when we initially came out with that first budget, that was much larger, like the 11% increase. We had several positions that were proposed, but ended up being cut as part of getting our budget down to a reasonable amount. So no one lost their job.
Yes, so that's my concern, because the article does make it sound like we are, opting to have the superintendent full-time and cutting teachers for our kids, and that's not the case at all. So that's problematic. If I'm reading this just as a member of the public, I'm going to be alarmed.
Has the board had any feedback from the public regarding concerns from parents regarding that article? No? Okay. Have you?
I
You have? Okay.
I received the article from them.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to speak to the second part?
I'll speak to all of it. First of all, I don't write the articles. I did write the article back in last fall, and I will support my right to do that, and have vetted that. But maybe the board is not aware that I'm sitting here listening to people who are on Zoom, and the reporter from the KJ is almost always with us. So there was a quote in there, and I don't know if board members get called, or you should know that if you say something, it's recorded, and the reporter it's fair game for anybody to use. I can't help the tone. Emily has always done a great job I've worked with her for 4 years. She does a great job of covering us and try to do it as factually as possible. So I don't know how to speak to it. I'd be very curious to see what type of policies or restrictions the school board would want to. Generally speaking, in years of doing this, there are 2 spokespeople for the school board. For the schools, the school board chair and the superintendent. I will once again repeat that I, as a spokesperson for the school and as a representative of the entire school system, are often asked to do things aren't necessarily exactly what I want to do. To go back to when it comes to budget, I very soon need to, before the end of this week, I need to get an article out to the paper. And by the way, I will say this, you guys probably didn't know this yet, but the advertiser, which we thought was coming back, is not coming back. But there's another thing called Lake Region, Lakes Region, whatever, that will publish articles for us, and that serves our area, so that will get out ASAP. I just try to present the facts, and I guess different people will read it. I read that article and thinking, well, I don't get what's at issue here, but I certainly can see how people want to believe what they want to believe, and will find things to feed into their belief system.
Ivy.
I have also received some feedback, and upon reading it myself, it is very misleading, because for one, the school board doesn't make the decisions as to what gets cut and what doesn't. It gets proposed to the school board, what hard work and decisions that the administrators make, and then we hear that, and it goes into the information. And according to what I read and others have, that they took it as it is the school board's fault for cutting, making decisions to cut vital positions, when we didn't have any control of that, nor was it gone back to correct some of that misleading information, that we don't have control over what positions get cut, what decisions the administrators make. So it is very misleading, and with the the fact that, you know, there's been a lot of misconceptions being stated, there's a lot of opinions being formed under, you know, I think false assumptions, and it is extremely concerning because that creates tension and divide amongst our community, pushing us in the opposite direction than where we should be as a team. You know, the school board, you know, I know people talk about the three-legged stool, but in reality, we are an entire unit, every component, whether students, teachers, administrators, school board, superintendent, we are one huge, vital team. And if we are looking at each other as being individual teams, how are we working in the best interest of all the students? You know, we are one huge unit. That should be what's completely supported and valued, you know, and it just seems like we're heading in a different direction with a lot of misconceptions, and, you know, I think it's important to be more accurate at, you know, with stuff like this, because it does lead people to assuming things that aren't quite correct.
Thank you, Ivy. Does anyone else have any? Yes, Monica?
This is why I would like to make a simple proposal that there be another set of eyes if the superintendent communicates with the media, that be run by the chair first.
Thank you, Monica. Jim, did you want to speak to that? Thank you. Any other questions? Catherine? No?
Actually, I do. I just want to, with regard to the letter last fall, perhaps, when Emily calls me, I can't make the connection between the things that were necessarily spoken about in the article. I don't know we're talking about the two positions or making that connection. The only conversation that we had at this level was the meeting we had in the small conference room, and we talked about the positions that were in there, and the school board chose to support adding the three positions at the middle school and not supporting. Jolene basically said we're withdrawing the part for the two from the elementary school. It's recorded, so you can go back and look at it. So I didn't say that, so I will do whatever the board collectively decides to do. That seems like a really, really bad idea.
Thank you. Ivy?
I have recently been through the recordings, through all of them, because I haven't sat well since the May 3rd school board meeting. And it was very well supported to have the literacy coach, because it is important to have that support for our grade schoolers. So I didn't hear the board at all in disagreement with those positions. I think we were all rallied to have those included. But, you know, we trust in the hard work that the administrators made and the decisions they made. So I just like to clarify that.
Thank you, Ivy. Catherine?
I think I will say something then. I think if there are issues that, and I wonder if as a board, we bring them to the attention to Alicia, because really the issue would be if somebody needs to publish a retraction. So, but I think that goes for Alicia, and I don't think it's an issue that it's not the voice of the superintendent. Schools call superintendents. I mean, papers call superintendents. That's what they do. That somebody has to do that. And so I think if you read or somebody, you know, you hear that there's some sort of misunderstanding, and then you go back and look at the tape and you're like, oh no, this is clearly not the way it is. I think a strong pathway would be to let Alicia know, and then Alicia could contact the newspaper and, you know, speak about something. I think, and then if need be, is there a retraction or a restatement? I think that's the line of communication though, I think.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Jim?
I will say that, I mean, supporting what Monica's suggesting, I think articles that I write, like I'm going to do the article on the budget, run that by the board chair. I have zero issue with that. That makes perfect sense. I can't be responsible for, I don't want Emily to feel like I think she does an amazing job covering events for us, and she's not divisive at all, and I don't think I said anything that was divisive. If it came across that way, I on here, so she's obviously hearing this conversation and what people's concerns are. It's a little bit baffling to me. I've done this job for a long, long time, and I've never been accused of the things I've been accused of in the last year here in Winthrop.
Thank you, Jim. Ivy?
I'd like to really see about proposing of getting a copy of the MSBA school board book for Alicia, where she is a new member of being a chair. And I think that would be very supportive in helping Alicia with better guidance on how to go about things.
Okay, thank you. Monica?
Can we put that in the form of a motion, Ivy's suggestion?
I don't think a motion is necessary, but
Okay.
I'll see to it.
I did want to say, I completely agree with both Jim and Catherine on this point. So if there is a misunderstanding on Emily's part, then sure, to point that out to you and have you give her that correction, I think would be great. And I think it would be an excellent idea for the superintendent's further communication with the media to go through the eyes of the chair.
Thank you, Monica. Any other comments? Catherine?
I have a copy of that book for you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to, oh, by the way, I just want to welcome our student representatives back. You guys were at a tennis match, so hopefully that went well. You can update us what.
Just dawned on me that the next board meeting is after David graduates. So if we table that discussion of the student, David won't be here. And I'm sure he's, as much as he loves us, I'm sure he's not going to come hang out with us after he graduates. He'd be the first to ever do that. You want to do that?
I'll come back at 1, say hi.
I'm open to bringing that back and having a discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to bring that back.
You don't need to, it's tabled, she
yeah.
can just bring it, it's in the same meeting.
I'd like to untable that.
Thank you. So we will begin our discussion on the roles of our student representatives. And that is following the policy I just mentioned, BEC perhaps? I think BCH. Thank you.
Okay, so we tabled it because you weren't here and we really wanted to have a conversation with all 7 of us involved in thinking about for next year. So we've got David's expertise and then Joseph, you're being part of the role moving forward. And actually I think it would be really helpful if I could snag this. So there's a policy and maybe we could all, we talked about when we're going to table this, that we could look at this policy, but we do not have copies for this. I think, I guess maybe I can speak for the board and you guys too, but we're sort of thinking of expanding your role and having it be a liaison of the student experience in Winthrop and hearing from students about the student experience. That's sort of what I was thinking about and sort of feedback in that way. And so mechanisms, like we have this venue here, and sort of what would it look like on your end? Like what would be responsibilities you would have? Where would you be getting the information? Is it just the high school where you go? Is it what are the systems at the high school where you think that would work and be effective? Who would, Jay, who does Mr. Dufour, who to speak to about that? And really this is for everybody here. This is just an open discussion. So fresh ideas, perspectives, concerns, excitement are welcome on the table. So it says the duties of the student board member to provide continuing input for board deliberations. So I think this is something that we can really maybe structure. So if you are providing us with continuing input on board deliberations, so what we are going to talk about, like I love the fact that we've got this representative voting now, that you have that, but it's actually, what information can you provide us and make sure there's sort of systems in addition to that. Strengthen communication between board and district students, and then to represent all students and facilitate the discussion of all sides of issues relating to students. So you'd be representing not just your personal points of view, but, groups of students or different ages or things like that. And so, I think that's the duties that you have.
Does the board have any questions? Monica?
I'm really excited about this. I think that we should hear more from the students. I want the students' voices to be included more. I'm trying to think, if you guys have any idea about how you would structure that. I mean, you're full-time students, you're involved in sports, you're leaders in your school, or you wouldn't be here. And so I don't want it to be a tremendous onus on you, to figure out how to do that. I wonder if you have any ideas, if we have any models that exist out there that we could look at for gathering that sort of information. But I think it would be really valuable to have.
Thank you. Ivy?
I didn't see it noted in the policy, but I haven't quite read it yet either. But I wanted to see about, I know that their votes are not included, but I'd like to be able to have them have an opportunity to vote as well, and have that consideration in there. I think it's a great civics, process and learning experience for them.
Thank you, Ivy. You weren't here last meeting, but we did go ahead and extend them honorary voting, and so now that would be included in our minutes and whatnot. So they're doing that. Yeah. And so we may have put them on the spot. So I don't want to make you come up with ideas now, but maybe just give us some thought over the next few weeks. Okay. Monica?
Do we know who's coming aboard as the new rep?
We do.
That's
That's what I was just saying. Joseph asked my question.
Go ahead, Joseph.
So replacing David is the incoming junior, Abigail St. Clair, who won the election. I think she'll be a great member. Very good voice for the students.
Perfect. Jim, did you want to speak to that?
I just want to say David can't be replaced, but that's,
for better or for worse, I cannot be replaced.
All right, we'll move on to our next discussion. 7.3, discussion regarding comprehensive survey, and I'll extend the time over to Megan.
Hi folks. So to start off the conversation, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a timeline on how we came about this. Alicia approached Mr. Hodgkin around a comprehensive survey, and he reached out to me and said, hey, this is something that's going to be going on at the next board meeting as a discussion. And I said, great, I'm glad I know in advance. Let's gather some data from surrounding districts. So Winthrop is a member of the Maine Curriculum Leaders Association. We're also a member of the Western Maine Educational Collaborative. So I put together what I would consider a pretty quick survey, and I sent it out to them saying, how many of you do a comprehensive survey? Yes or no? If it's no, why? If it's yes, is it something that you create in-house? Is it something that you purchase into, or whether you are actually purchasing into or you just subscribe to? And I got a response back from 14 districts, which is atrocious. And 3 of those 14 do not offer what they would consider a comprehensive survey, but 2 of them do solicit feedback through surveys intermittently throughout the year. One of them does NEASC accreditation, which is high school accreditation for that district, and that requires a comprehensive survey leading up to the year where you are actually going to be accredited or not. Let's see, 4 schools said yes, they do a comprehensive survey, but it's created in-house. The follow-up question for that was who was involved in the development, and then feedback or comments on the process. And all, let's see, 3 of them say building and district administrators. 1 of those 3 included teachers and staff. And then the other one had building, district, board members, and teacher association representatives as the in-house creators. And then 1 was just the director of curriculum. The majority, so 7 of the 14 all said that yes, they do send out a comprehensive survey, but it's not something that they create in-house. And the majority of those respondents said that they do the PBIS survey, which I had sent to you folks, what that packet looks like. It includes up to 5 surveys, an elementary one. The high school one has 2 different versions, a shorthand one that's only 9 questions, one that's a little bit more, a family survey, and a staff survey as well. The PBIS survey is free. You guys have a copy of it all, that was what was sent to you. And in the table, that's kind of that middle column. And so it's free, it's online, there's actually even a free way to deliver it and have them take all your data. But if we decide to modify that survey at all, we can't obviously take advantage of the online modality to send it out to folks. So as we do consider tweaking it, which I feel like is supported by our admin team, and I know would be probably supported by our board as well, we will need to have capacity to go through the actual data. It's not going to compile, it's not going to create reports. We can try to create something parallel to that, but that will be the onus of the district, probably myself, which is fine. But just, full disclosure that it becomes a little bit more comprehensive in the amount of work that it will take as well, once we get that data in. So that's kind of what got us here, the PBIS survey. It's free. PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It is a culture survey. It is considered valid and reliable. There were two reports that were done, one in 2016, one in 2014. So it's considered a valid and reliable measure. So again, we're tweaking it a little bit for our needs, but we're starting with a base that we know statistically is a good place to start. So open, I had sent you folks, so then I kind of approached Jim and Alicia with this. We had a quick meeting. The initial surveys are supposed to take between 15 and 20 minutes, which feels like a lot, and then we added an additional comment section, which I know we want to allow our staff, our students, and our families to have some actual written words in it. It's harder to take that in an efficient way and come up with a solution, but it is, we do want to give that voice. We do want to make sure that we're gathering feedback and ideas as well, because I know that that's something important to you folks. It's also important to us as well. So we went through, after speaking with them, I got kind of the green light to continue. Last Thursday, towards the end of our 18 meeting, the 18 got together with the document that you have in front of you, but only the middle column filled out with the PBIS stuff. And they went through kind of item by item for the family and the staff survey and decided which items make sense to just continue with, which items to add. So you can see there's a comment section under each heading. That way we can kind of sort those comments quickly into where they would apply, and then any other removals as well. So we made it through the family and the staff. We did not have time to get through the student. Mr. Dufour and I spoke briefly. We're thinking that that might be something we can vet through the student leadership team at the high school. They meet next Wednesday during their WIN period. Also, probably would want to take that to the AV team as well. Open to discussion on that, feedback on that. I have a pen. Happy to take note and listen.
Thank you very much. Ivy?
The school personnel survey, is that also including the administrators, like the whole umbrella of?
Yep, so one of the demographic questions, and the demographics are very consistent across all of the surveys, and they're, with whichever intention they have. It does say under school personnel, what is your, here we are, what is your primary job classification? A teacher, administrator, certified staff member, certified, or other staff member. I prefer not to answer. So you'll see on all the demographics, it does say I prefer not to answer. However, in all of the questions, that is not an option. So it would be teacher, administrator, certified staff member as well. I don't believe, to be honest, that this, the way that this is framed as school personnel, it does not make sense for it to be transportation or food service. It's centered around classroom. So I think as far as if we're trying to get a vision of that, this would not really be applicable for those roles in district. Sorry, Josh. And Sam.
Catherine?
So I have a couple questions. The PBIS, you said you can't add questions to it, right? Can you remove that and still use their platform?
So I honestly did not 100% sign up for it because I wanted to make sure that this was a direction the board wanted to move in, and I'd be happy if we were looking at maybe not adopting, but reasonably fully adopting most of these things, then I'd be happy to create an account and start moving in that direction, do some more research. If it was worthwhile, and we were feeling like this was what was a good fit for our district.
So, just on sort of when I look through this, minus the ones that to remove, I'm wondering if there would be a strength in having the official PBIS as an annual thing, you know, do it in the fall and the spring, sort of, just because it can be like that. And then, especially if you have a culture of getting this feedback from these groups, and then you could have a survey, because there's the targeted pieces about remote days and those sort of unique surveys, and then getting that free response sort of answers either as a supplement to that, like I really see that they're at the end of each one, so I think that would be tricky. I just wonder if we could take advantage of the free and the data analysis and sort of the ease, and I know with surveys, it is really hard to write good surveys, like that is like how to get them and the data and all that. So if we have one that's been tested, that we've got data, you can start comparing things, you can look at things, they're targeted. I'm wondering if there's a way we could use that but still meet our unique needs here at Winthrop and make sure that information, that's as a board, so I'm just like, that's what's striking out to me is, can we use this? I think the one question that you wanted to remove, or two are like, they don't seem appropriate too. It's the ones on the family, asking number 10, my students frequently recognized for good behavior, and then parents might not know the answer to that. And the other one was, my students' textbooks are up to date and are in good condition. So I don't know if it's important that we remove them. So anyhow, so that's what I was thinking, is just like, is there a way we could use this and take advantage of that analysis, which would be great, but yet still meet our needs?
And just to clarify, all of the optional comments section, those would be optional questions on the survey. Those are not part of the survey as well. So those are all, each of those blue ones are also, those additions, those
They're not
quality
part
pieces
of the
are
survey.
summative.
Sorry.
Oh,
They're not parts of the official survey, right, that's what I understood, right, so if we want that in there, which I think we do, we want parents to be able to speak up, is this just the format that
Monica, I'm glad to hear that this is a working document. When I looked at this, I thought, okay, what are we going to do with this information? Why are these particular questions here? What are we going to do with it? What prompted the desire for a comprehensive survey were the parents at the meeting saying they would really like to have much more of a voice in letting us know what they want in the school. So I would think it would be really helpful to have one or two parent representative on that drafting committee. I don't see, there are a number of these. I'm not sure how a lot of this information is going to meet that objective.
With the objective, can I just clarify what the board's objective is? I guess maybe I need that clarification, that way we can move in the same direction.
So I think probably the parents could speak to that better. So there were parents that were feeling excluded, there were parents that had wanted to put their voices out concerning remote school days, if they felt like those were meeting their children's needs, about snow days, about the spring conferencing, about volunteerism. And while I'm really excited that we are making inroads in addressing some of those concerns, I know that there are a number of concerns out there. I don't necessarily know what they all are because I'm not a parent with a child in the school right now, but I think, meeting, including those parents, bringing them in, making the, closing that gap between us and the community is one of the primary objectives.
Thank you, Monica. And I can kind of speak to that. And in our meeting, I think there was a little bit of a difference of what I thought a comprehensive survey was versus what this is. And we spoke a little bit about that. For me, thinking about a comprehensive survey, I explained that it covered a variety of topics. Because even asked about surveying the students, and then we also talked about, you know, making sure our students are included. And so, yeah, I think, you know, it's a starting place. I think there's a lot of good feedback here. I think there's also, you know, some questions that might not be best suited, but also speaking to what Catherine said about, you know, having the ability to analyze the data and not having to use, you know, your hours and your time is definitely a benefit. So kind of, you know, we'll have to weigh the pros and cons, I think. Catherine, I saw your hand. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just, I just wanted to, I don't know, did you see on the family section, is this missing the mark about, like, I feel welcome at my student's school, I attend parent-teacher conferences, I'm actively involved, like, are these just different questions, are you saying? I feel comfortable talking to my teachers, my students, I feel comfortable talking to teachers at my student's school. Do you see that? It's the back section, family section.
There's a family versus school personnel.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
two different ones. Yes, I see.
is there something? Was that because those things you mentioned? I mean, maybe there's something else. I just thought, and they've also included the remote days here as the things that they would want to make sure we are serving our students. So I'm wondering, looking at that, is there still something about the feeling of it that you're saying? So maybe you could talk a little bit more about what it is, because this is a very specific thing that's a tried and true statistical thing that we can sort of compare and do that. But if you're saying what sort of niche it's missing for you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I see that language. Perhaps it's the formalization. I wanted to know, so what would we do with this data? If I were given this as a parent, I don't know, I wonder did you look at any of did you get from the schools that had in-house surveys, did you take a look at them? Because I'm not necessarily interested in, you know, a data aggregate as much as I want to hear, you know, the parents' voices. I don't need to, draw a chart about it. I need to have a better understanding.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to be honest, no, I did not follow up with the no's. I also did not require that districts tell me which district they were from. I know at least one of the no's is RSU 18 because their assistant super reached out to me for clarification, and he was one of the no's. And he does just the pointed short survey pieces. So part of why you would do a culture survey, for one, specific to Winthrop, last year we started a process similar to this with our administrators, where we did send out a somewhat comprehensive created in-house survey to all of the staff at the end of last year in each of the buildings. So having a staff survey annually at the end of the year is actually a structure we're trying to build in to allow feedback for our staff. So really what we've done is we've taken this idea of an end of year and or twice a year survey depending on how things go, and we've extended it to include other additional stakeholder groups. So right now there are lots and lots of projects. Actually looking at a handful of these headings, I'm just checking things on my list. I know for instance, one of them is safety in the building, school safety. That is a heading across all three surveys. We're working on our school level. Our set teams will be getting together this summer. We're working on a school level draft for our school emergency operation plans, our EOPs, to finalize some of those details. We have plans to be meeting with our emergency personnel early in June that Joel has set up for us. So we're moving on safety, making sure that our staff feel safe and our procedures are aligning to that. Our students feel safe and they're aware of what the protocols are is very important. So I think some of these other little pieces, that's something that's important. I think talking about perception on what our teachers, so focusing mainly on this family one, what the perception is that our teachers feel about students' achievement. I think that's an important conversation for us to have as educators, and it's something that we don't have to ask, but like it's nice to be able to communicate that, because I think there has been communications about that specifically when it came to some conversation around remote days, of what our teacher, you know, the parent perception of our teachers, and this is a perception survey. So we're just trying to measure the perception of our of our families, of our staff, which we already started the structure for last year, and then also including that student voice.
Megan, having the survey already set aside for the staff, do you see that it's possible to kind of come up with something, incorporating some of the data from the PBIS? Because I do think there's really good information, really good questions here. And as far as, taking up, I want to be respectful of your time.
Sorry, I spoke.
No, go ahead.
I don't want my time to be consideration. I just wanted to be very clear on that a lot of districts use it out of the box because they're willing to make that compromise. Some of these districts are much larger. I really don't want my time consideration to be a deciding factor on whether we're sending something that's going to meet our needs, and then we're going to have a conversation again in the future to say we still need to do something different. I would like to have that need met now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ivy?
I know that, I understand that there's several surveys the students have already go through several times in a year. So will this help replace some of those, so we're not taken away from their daily academics to have even more surveys? And will this also be able to help with some of the information that the administrators need for their school and planning? Because I know I'm assuming that they also have several different things they have to collect information on. Will this be able to be used in a manner that it will kind of what do they say, kill all birds with one stone, or and handle all that instead of having all these redundant surveys?
I think the intention, at least for the staff survey, would be that this would be a replacement piece for that. I will say that the other survey that we do twice a year is the PASS. It's now been rebranded as the Renaissance Survey, and that is a survey to look at non-academic barriers. So what that does is it splits it into, and I can spend a lot of time talking about this too because we've been working on PD in our buildings around the PASS survey, but it's students' perceptions of self. So it's different. It is a different data point. So when we're thinking about students' sense of connectedness and self-perception are two of the 9 areas. When you start looking at some deficits in some of those other areas, we're able to target interventions. Part of the PASS survey is that you notice highs and lows, and it pairs those lows with interventions that can be done on the class or the individual basis. So our school counselors have all received training on that. They can do that. We are starting to expand that training to our teachers as well. So the intention of these 2 surveys are very different. Another survey that happens every other year is the NEHAS survey, which is the health survey that is put out by the state of Maine that happens for our middle school and high school students. And that is not any data that we actually receive our own student data for. We get county-wide data for that. So no, it will not, because the intent's a little bit different. But it would for at least the staff. I don't think we'd be sending out multiple staff. But I think we also have been kind of navigating how do we collect feedback from staff as well. And what does that look like? Making sure we're thoughtful there as well.
Thank you. Monica?
So you said that you had done that staff survey. So what have you done with the data? What do you plan to do with that data?
So one thing that happened as a result of that staff survey is we did share it at the board level. Some of the highs and lows for that. It informed some of our strategic planning stuff. But honestly, this is a question more because they were building-based surveys that would be for our principals. And I hate to speak for them, but I know what they did because we're a pretty good team. They all took it harder than they needed to because that's what you do with feedback from people that you're leading. And they all came up with goals this year, and I know that every principal within the first few days or month of school talked to their staff about what they were going to work on this year based on the responses in the survey. And yeah, Jill, you wanna?
And
Julie?
that actually, the survey that we did for administration actually is where the leadership team came from. So for myself, I can speak and say, yes, I spoke to the staff initially at the beginning of the year. I talked to the survey about the survey, and then there were 4 of us, 2 counselors and the assistant principal and myself. We had several meetings where we chunked that information, and we worked in different groups at each meeting. So level meetings, they were interdisciplinary groups and cross-grade level groups, and we kept paring it down until we could come up with collective goals. And then from there, the leadership team is going to work on those collective goals. So we're still in the process of working through that survey, and that's where the leadership team is coming in now to work on those goals.
Monica?
Thank you for that explanation. I think, you know, if I think about it, I think my primary objection, rather, is the language here is very erudite. It's very formal. And for a teacher, great, you know, no problem. But a lot of times with our families, our folks who are most disenfranchised are probably not prepared for a survey with this level of diction and formality. Okay, so I think that they will again, because of that, be disenfranchised. And we don't want that. We want to give them a voice. So that's really my primary concern.
Thank you, Monica. Does the board have any other questions? Jim, did you want to say something?
I don't have, well, I actually do have a question. We're looking, when we talked about this as an administrative team, there were a number of things that were in the beginning. The first part of it, the demographics that I know that I've heard had a lot of feedback over the 4 years I've been here. The parents wonder why that needs to be a part of the demographics, and so we did not feel as an administrative team that we should, because this is a program that we can get free, that we should take them out. We did take a number of things out, but a lot of the things under the demographics I would particularly ask the board to look at and consider whether you think you want us to ask our families and our students and our staff those questions. And I don't want to identify them because I think that's up to you. And so ultimately, appreciate all this feedback, but I think this survey is going to come out from the Winthrop Public Schools in a joint effort of the school board and the administrative team. So if there are things on here that you don't want to get feedback on or get parents upset with you about asking, then you better take them off the survey now.
Thank you. And yes, that was something that was brought to my attention, and I think there are things that are very personal, and I think we should take a look at those and having those not asked. Catherine.
So, Megan, you sold me on reminding me that we're a small district, and I think we really want to personalize it for our community, for our students, for our parents, for our group. So, and we do want that free response area. So, that's where I'm leaning as a board member, is to maybe build off of this, because I think that I do know surveys are really they can be tricky, and so just building off of something that is known, I think is a great starting spot.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm wondering if it would be helpful to have an ad hoc committee to work with the folks that are working on this, so we've got board representation there.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that maybe, I don't know if we can have like just a little gathering, just kind of like pull together the different opinions and try and help so that it's not all on you guys. Who put in a lot of hard work already, but just kind of like just a little group to kind of come up with some suggestions and put something together with members from all the important people, which the students, the school board, parents, the administrators. I don't know if something like that's possible.
Thank you. So I know as far as our roles and responsibilities, the administrators are kind of tasked with the development of the surveys with the board's input. And so that might be, we get the results of that, and then the board has an opportunity to look through it for last edits or whatever. Megan?
Also very open to feedback in this moment in public session. We're here, it was an item on the agenda as a discussion. I tried to provide materials to you folks in advance so that we'd be able to get some feedback tonight and continue the work so that hopefully we're able to give this out to our families in a time frame that's going to be actionable. Because the closer we get to summer, the less people are likely to open up their emails to be able to do so. Our students will be out and our staff will be out too. So just very open to feedback this evening as we are all together right now. I know this does not include additional parents. However, it was on the agenda. I will take whatever directive the board sends my way, but also would love to get some of that work started if we are able to get to that point right now.
Thank you, Megan. I think,
Just make a quick.
yes, please.
Yeah, I think if you just give us a couple minutes, I think we could all just go right through this, eliminate the ones we want to eliminate, and just give you that feedback right now.
Great suggestion.
I'm particularly interested, so I've been focusing on the survey for parents or families, but I wonder, particularly if our student representatives, might have some insight about the student part of the survey.
If you guys were part of those two leadership teams,
I'm not.
you are.
How's the board doing? Done? Okay. Catherine, do you want to go over this?
We came up with a couple things that we also, this would be Monica, or you, Alicia and I, about, we agree that the demographics are not what we want to include, and we don't want to lead with that for certain. We thought maybe, very much appreciating Monica's comment about a more conversational language in the questions, and sort of commenting like I feel versus my student, like I feel, like making it personal for the person responding. I think we didn't really want to wordsmith, so that right now it's overall comments. The other piece that we got to was like, under school safety heading number 4, it says, my student's school sets clear boundary rules for behavior. And so this is just some a flavor of this. Just this idea about how those behavioral policies are implemented. Because as a parent, when you're reading it, you can understand the rules, but do you also feel like you understand how you can support them as a parent, like how you can help your child do what they're supposed to do. So that was the only kind of piece. So I think tone would be the things, maybe an I, more conversational. Did you come up with anything else? Not like, and we got through the parent one. But we want to do the top picture, but I guess if you're open, and I don't know what our rules are, yeah, I'm open to other comments.
Okay, other board members? Ivy?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the tone, because it can lead people to believe that their kids aren't safe when they are safe, that the teachers don't keep warm and inviting rooms. I've been in almost all classrooms, and they're extremely warm and inviting. Their personal touches are amazing. So just to kind of like fix some of those, because I don't want to lead people to believe, something under an assumed pretense based off the questions, because our schools are amazing. We have some pretty amazing people there. But yeah, the demographs, I also agree. I don't think we need to kind of marginalize anybody under them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All the demographic stuff, or just, there's something you can leave and something you can cut?
The only one I had a question about is it relevant about enrollment in special ed, gifted and talented? Is that relevant to any of the work that, the feedback that we want to get? That was the only question of the demographics that I thought about as maybe including. But again, I think it's really important where these things are placed, so that would be like at the end, it would be like the last question. And like, are they involved in special ed, gifted, talented, whatever it is?
Ivy, go ahead.
Just from being from a diverse background myself, sometimes when asked some of these questions, like your gender identity, race and stuff like that, can make people feel kind of like marginalized. I know for me, having those our students, our teachers, extremely diverse, and I don't feel that we need to like pinpoint that out, and when their personality and who they are is more priority.
Thank you, Ivy. Monica?
So I'm in complete agreement with that, that the only two questions that I would retain on demographics would be the first, they can indicate the grade of your student, and then the programs. As for the others, I don't object to them. I think certainly putting it in conversational language is going to be a lot more helpful. I would suggest, I think, rather than I feel, for a number of reasons that this English teacher will not get into. So I am worried, my concern is diction, and then my main, and I would, the two questions that were struck, I think could remain fine and could offer valuable information. But I don't know, because I'm looking at this paper copy, what it looks like on screen, Is it kind of like Google Forms where we're hit with one, or is there this whole kind of, so that is important in the presentation. And I would like for there to be an opportunity for written feedback, not at the end of each section, but after each question, so that parents who wish to have an opportunity to elaborate on their answer.
Thank you, Monica. Any other questions or comments from the board or student representatives? Megan, do you feel like you have enough feedback to move forward, or would you like to?
If the board agrees with all of the comments that are made this evening, then we can do some of that. I think I would, for ease of sitting with this data, if the board wants me to add an optional question for comment after every question, I can do that, but each of those sections is 5 or 6 questions. And the comment specifically says, any additional comments, feedback, or suggestions related to interpersonal relationships. And that is the whole section of interpersonal relationships. So I feel like that does somewhat reference that, just for ease. I also, again, will support whatever the board decides. However, I do just want to say the intention behind including marginalized demographic groups is to make sure that we are servicing all of our marginalized demographic groups. In the PBI survey, it says we should not poll demographic groups that are less than 5 to come to conclusions around that group. But if you've ever read any of that MIHAS data, students that are part of these groups are much higher likelihood of self-harm and suicidal ideation. So although I will respect the decision of the board, I also want to make sure that you're presented with data around student wellness for these demographic groups. And I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not being accusatory, I'm just intending to provide information.
Thank you, Megan. Ivy?
I was just thinking, especially where, I do understand that. I come from a lot of those marginalized groups. I asked that because we already asked these important questions on other stuff. And that's why I really don't think to bombard students with that, because I don't feel that a label, people should feel like that's what their most importance of being accepted by or acknowledged by, when the students have amazing individual as who they are, personality-wise, and it gets hard when you are part of those marginalized groups to constantly be picked out and feel like you're a bit exploited. So that's why I just want to be a little bit more sensitive when it comes to, asking these questions that are already built into other parts of questionnaires, and just focus more on the important values of, our community, and how can we bridge and build and strengthen the foundations of what makes this community as amazing as it is.
Catherine?
I do agree with what I was speaking about, but I also think in order to be able to be as actionable as we can and supportive of our community, I am rethinking that this could be a way mean, I think there is the piece that we want to encourage people to take it, so we want conversational language, we want, we don't want the first question to be something that somebody reads and says, well, I don't want to answer this. But I think there is a way that we could be more effective if we are able to identify a group of marginalized, or whatever, just a smaller group that just provides us information, we can do a bit better job perhaps. So I really heard what Megan said there. I think that's something to consider. I mean, likewise, I was also saying take it off, and then I just realized, no, actually that's not true. There is this other part. I think one of the critical pieces though is I do not think you can start with it. Like, if you have it there, it should be the last at the end.
Thank you, Catherine. We have a question on Zoom. It says, I'm wondering if there is a question asking parents if they would attend a spring conference if offered, or if they are interested in having them reinstated. We do have a question regarding conferences, but I don't believe they are specific to spring conferences. Let me just check. So the question that is on the survey is, I attend parent-teacher conferences at my student's school. It just says conferences and not specific to fall or spring. And I would entertain feedback from board members. Monica?
I think it's an excellent idea to include the question about a preference for spring conference. That's, that's been in the discussion at our last 3 meetings. We had a parent-initiated survey on that, and so I think that to include that in our survey is very important. As I also wanted to respond to what you said, Catherine, and I would still really prefer to strike these, and my argument to that would be we are a very small school district, and there's no, so you talked about the value of that being if there are, certain answers from a group of, I don't know, let's say we don't have very many Somalian refugee students, but if there are only 2 or 3, does that mean, that we discount them? I don't think that there's any group, no matter how small, because we are so small, that we would want to discount. As Ivy said, that's why I don't see this necessary. Again, as Ivy said, we get this information in other ways, and I think it's very off-putting, even if we ask it, as optional toward the end.
Thank you, Monica. Tim?
I 100% disagree with putting any particular parent questions on here, because if we allow one parent question, why would we deny another one? And we could be up to 50, 60, and what question we can't deny any one question if we accept one, so I don't think that's a good idea for this survey. And we had plenty of meetings and made that decision already. And I also my opinion, sometimes I think we overthink things here, and we need to get rolling here.
Okay, so can we do a straw poll as a board? Those in favor of removing the demographic? Okay, and so Megan, that is feedback for you. Those in favor of, remind me what else we were, changing the language to, I think, a more conversational language, straw poll. Okay. Other suggestions for survey changes? Okay, I think that concludes our discussion here. Megan, do you have what you need?
One last clarification,
Yes.
not all demographics. We are including the grade that your student or students are in, and are we or are we not, because there was mixed reviews on the additional programs such as IEP 504 GT.
So we'd like to include grade and age and whatnot. Is the information about the special ed and the GIT programs, is that something that is beneficial for us to know that we would use as a data point?
It would be the same as kind of the other demographic groups, but we do have a larger proportion of students that are special ed or receiving 504 services, so it could help us to identify if they.
How does the board feel for proposing, in support, those who are in support of keeping that data point or that question? Raise your hand. And Monica, did you want to say something?
I did, and so I took under advisement what you said about having space for commenting after each question. And so, okay, I can agree, but rather than, and again, in the interest of making this more accessible to all, rather than referring to, where is this, additional comments, feedbacks related to teaching and learning. If we could simply say, what additional feedback do you have regarding the 3 previous questions, okay? So people are not all necessarily going to look at that heading and make that connection. But if you were to say the X number of previous questions, then that might be helpful.
Perfect, thank you.
And taking the language from that, those in favor of having that language, raise your hand. Okay, Ivy.
With the IEP and the 504 stuff, just because, special ed is very close to my heart, I wonder if that's something that we can reach out to the special ed team and maybe get feedback on a better way to ask that question so that we can identify if there's any students that may have learning challenges or disadvantages in a way that we can try, because I know there are a lot of kids that have them that it's not clearly identified or understood yet, and I think if we can have that maybe expressed in a better way, that we can help try to identify that, be able to provide better services for those students that are, as we can.
Jim?
The only other comment, I don't remember who made it, that I think is really good, even if we stay with the demographics, is if we do the demographics at the end, I think if you do it at the beginning, it has potential of setting a tone. Do it at the end, I think you finish the survey, so you're just wrapping it up. I don't think it influences the rest of the survey.
Monica?
We decided to eliminate it. We just decided.
No.
Except for the 2 point, the
Yeah.
few
Oh, I thought
things.
so, the 2 points.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our, okay. Thank you very much, Megan, I really appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion to elect Emily Allen as a Winthrop High School math teacher beginning the FY25 school year as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion, please.
That'd be Jay.
So we're delighted after some interviews, not only to get more than one math applicant, which is great, to have a very strong applicant in Emily Allen. Emily is coming to us from the corporate world as a corporate accountant, and wasn't really her calling, and education is. She spent the entire school year subbing at the area schools, including Winthrop, and served for almost 2 months at the high school in the capacity of a long-term sub for a math class, and did a fantastic job. And the committee that interviewed was very impressed with Emily and her work ethic, and she's very excited to dive in.
Thank you so much. Any board discussion? Okay? No. Just kidding. We will, all those in favor? Yeah. Okay. We have a unanimous vote among our board and our student representatives. Sorry, Irene. We'll move on to our discussion around policy CBI, the evaluation of superintendent. And this is something that I sent to all the board members. I did print off an extra copy in case we needed that. I'll share with you. I need it. So we have, our superintendent evaluations have been sent out. There was a question around holding the reviewing process in open session, not an executive session. The policy does state that it's to be an executive session. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 times it does state that. We had one board member ask about changing the policy. We had some feedback saying that some board members didn't feel comfortable doing it in open session. So I thought we could open it up to discussion and see where that goes. Tim?
Yeah, I actually support changing this policy as, I don't have the exact language, but as an option, that it's a board's option if we feel like, year to year, if it's appropriate, that we should hold it public.
Thank you, Tim. Catherine?
Tim, to add on that, is this something you think should be at the superintendent's discretion, board's discretion? Where do you think that falls?
Yeah, I think it, I wish I wrote the actual words down. I think in the policy, it should be, I think, first, superintendent's choice. And at that point, what would the board think? I don't even know. I just feel like I think at certain times, I think it's appropriate and to protection of the superintendent, that should be an option for him or her.
Right, so that's what I was sort of wondering, where that piece, if our superintendent chooses that, that would be something that, again, it's for protection, because that's why I think it says executive is under a guise of some protection. And so I believe, and actually that was my question, Alicia and I sort of like, what is the rationale? Like, is there some sort of reason why we shouldn't? Because personnel issues are personnel issues. And we didn't hear back, you can tell me what you thought. But anyway, that's where my head is sort of like, if it's protection, I believe it's important to provide protection for the person being evaluated in whatever circumstance we're doing. And so, if that protection would be to be as a public conversation, I just don't understand. I wonder if there are reasons why we shouldn't, like structural reasons.
Thank you. Ivy?
I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Working in professions or that you work with your employee, having an open discussion and putting that out can create, it can paint things in a really bad manner. Maybe for the person who's providing some feedback, maybe for the person that's being evaluated. This is, I think, personal matters. I think to put this discussion out in public, is it going to set the precedent that now we're going to do every administrator's, review out in public? Are we going to do every teacher's, and so on? Because now we're going to set that expectation. This policy was put into place to, have a discussion amongst, the employees and the employers and the employee, to find ways that we can work together and how can we improve things, what great things have been done, what challenges need to be worked on, and having that open public discussion, I think people can take it many different ways. And I think you start to get into defamation of character, which is another concerning factor that, to safeguard not only the superintendent, because if the discussion doesn't go into details and people are left with a lot of questions, what is that gonna bring up? Are people gonna start thinking ill of the superintendent? Are people gonna start thinking ill of others, not having all the information and facts? And I think it just sets a really bad precedent that we are, putting the superintendent on display in public and discussing personal things that, that shouldn't really be out in public.
Thank you, Ivy. Monica?
Yes, I'm also concerned, and I definitely think it needs to be an executive session because there are a number of things that the board is aware of that the public is not necessarily aware of for good reasons, okay? Those things may well need to be addressed. And if we were not to give the reasons, behind certain, reasons why we were to evaluate, a deficit here or there, we couldn't give the reasons because these things are not public knowledge. That would be really problematic. Also, I would say that if, I don't think that superintendent needs to be protected from anything. I don't think there's any animosity toward the superintendent, but if it is a matter of record, that if a decision should be made and then that decision challenged, legally, it would be, that there would be access to that information.
Thank you, Monica. Any other questions from the board? Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I have, this year, I have heard things at this table that are very negative. They're slanderish, and I don't like it. And I feel that going to executive session is not always the best. We should protect all employees, and I think this should be an option. I didn't say this has to be this way, but I think in the policy we're stuck. And I'm big on policies. I don't like changing policies. We make the decision, whatever. Policies are key. I think we should amend it. It's got nothing to do with teachers or principals. That's a whole different evaluation process. The superintendent is just its own unique system. And I just think it's more protective and in public, and let's have the open conversations. Again, if the superintendent wants it, I think that would be a horrible thing to do, to do it in public without the superintendent didn't want to.
Thank you, Tim. Ivy?
This is a perfect example of why I don't think it should be out in public, because obviously Tim just got upset and made comments that, people at this table don't treat each other fairly or whatever. That's based off of one opinion, that's not based off of facts, and those kind of comments lead to a public display of a lot of, it does not play well on a bunch of adults who are sitting at this table who are to work, working collaboratively in the best interest of our students. If we're not leading by example with, the school principal, the core. So our motto, let me just find where it is on the paper. So one of the core values I see throughout our entire district are values of respect, compassion, integrity, responsibility, and cooperation. So if we're having discussions and somebody doesn't like or interprets something the wrong way, and we're making comments such as that, leading people to the idea that there's this, dysfunctional table, I think it just doesn't reflect well upon our community or the core values that everybody in this room, values. I mean, it just doesn't come out right. And for one, I don't feel comfortable, having something, because it has happened before. When somebody has shared something, it was misinterpreted, and it created a lot of bitterness and tension, which led to, some of the situations that are still sitting. So, being able to have those conversations without feeling like under pressure and inviting more people in to create more, confusion and bitterness or misunderstanding, I think it's valuable to do stuff as appropriately as we should and professionally and in an ethical manner.
Thank you, Ivy. Monica?
Yes, and also if we were to do that in public, there are a number of different kinds of things, grievances, investigations, negotiations, legal matters that might come to the fore that we could not address openly? How would you propose we handle that?
So there are guidelines, and I sent these policy to you in your email about how we do our evaluations. And so there's a set of steps there. And so the things that you mentioned wouldn't obviously apply during that evaluation process.
But any evaluation that I make, I'm going to justify the rating that I give. I mean, it's only sensible to do so. And so in that context, there may be reference.
Thank you, Monica. Catherine?
I was sort of going to touch on that piece. I support, if the superintendent wants it to be in public, I support it in public. It's their evaluation, and been through this a few times, and just that communication. I think the evaluation, and I think I can appreciate, it is contained. It is a time that you are not to speak about things that are private and confidential. You are not to speak about grievances. You are not to speak about those things. And therefore, I think looking at that evaluation, which it's a new evaluation for our board, revised from the old one, and I really like that. It gave Alicia that feedback. So I really like that, and I think it will help us have that conversation. It's not to say there are other conversations that can be had, but it's not that conversation. And we really want to have a good evaluation in which we do the work that we are tasked to do under that bullet point. And other conversations can be had at different times. But we could also then, as we're speaking, even Joseph could be our president, there are people present, and we can have this conversation, and we can practice having positive conversations, because it does limit us to having a very focused conversation in which we are especially aware that we are being recorded, and it's a public conversation. So I would support, again, only it's a superintendent's evaluation. If that's what the superintendent feels like is the best mechanism for them to get feedback and to improve, because that's what we want them to do, then I would support that.
Thank you, Catherine. Ivy?
I just think it's really troublesome that we have policies and procedures set in place for a fact. They are driven from our main Department of Education. And the fact that people are persistent to try and change things and go against policy and procedures is a little concerning. The fact that people can sit here and say that comments will not be made regarding grievances or any of that other stuff, when in fact it was put in open position, open public forum or whatever, that there are several complaints filed against the board, which is supposed to be confidential until due process has had its effect. So there is a lot of things that are not comfortable. I don't feel comfortable, for one, providing any feedback in open public, because my comments and my opinions are not that, they're my feelings. And I don't need them construed any other difference, nor do I need to receive any backlash or feel bitterness for who I am or my children because of maybe my vision or my outlook or my thoughts disagree with somebody else's. The fact that, we keep making, reiterate people's comments incorrectly on this board, giving people the false assumptions, I think is concerning. I will not be part of a conversation of an evaluation of an employee just because of the ethics, the professional code of ethics that are within businesses, that are within schools, that are within everywhere, to violate those code of ethics and principles. So I will not be part of that mockery or that disrespect, or to even place that, upon our community or our schools or our teachers. Our teachers are amazing. Yes, there's been some things made, and I think it's driven a lot of situations out of control and driven a lot of wedges between very vital members of our community, and I think this is just another way to do that. I don't feel comfortable, because of knowing my personal situations, to have that picked, poked, or gone around to, to get a reaction. said, I think it's really, really unfair to even do that or even consider that. But, you know, we're all adults and we live by code of ethics and principles, and, you know, the fact that we are starting to go rogue from being able to look at situations ethically with an ethical lens is only going to create more chaos and destruction and drive this community further apart, when we should be embracing and bridging and doing things, because the ones in the end who get impacted the most are our students. You know, and if we're not doing things in an ethical and professional manner, how are we illuminating and leading the way to set better examples, to live by the integrity of the school's motto and core values? I mean, you're opening up to paint things in a really sad way that doesn't set good examples.
Thank you, Ivy. And so just to clarify, you know, when the policy goes about changing a policy or adopting a policy and whatnot, there's a series of steps that we have to go through. Namely, you know, we have a meeting, they go for second reading, first reading, second reading, you know, we take comments back from the feedback from the public and those who may reach out to us. And, you know, if we don't agree on policy meeting, then it then comes to a board vote. And so there is a policy and procedure for changing policies. And so while Tim's suggestion may not take place immediately for this year, they certainly could for other years. I did receive some feedback from our school attorney, which does state that according to the policy, he says, but at this point, the evaluation itself should be in executive session, just because that is the standing policy. And but it's something that we can examine for the future if that's what the board decides.
Just say one more thing. I think it's important, an evaluation is fact, not opinion. We are not to bring any opinion, backstory, anything of what we think or perceive. An evaluation is fact only.
Thank you, Tim. Jim?
I just want to say, I didn't know this, I mean, obviously, I didn't add this to the agenda, so I didn't know this discussion was going to happen. And I'm listening to everything people have said, and it's making my head spin. I'm stunned at the way that I try to uphold all of those values on the wall, and how it gets twisted to something completely different than that. That just shows a complete lack of understanding of actually who I am, what I'm all about, and am I concerned about being a problem solver, not a problem creator. And I've been referred to that by members of the public, by members of this board, and that's really hard. It's hard for me to hear, it's hard for my administrative team to hear, and this really is, I did not look at policy CBI when I made the request to have this in public session. I looked at exhibit BECE, which I know Alicia did talk to the attorney about it, but it basically says that request may request in writing that the investigation be conducted in open session. Such requests must be honored. So the key words in that I haven't shared with you is it says person charged or investigated. So I know the attorney's response to that was, this is not a charge or investigation. I respectfully disagree with that. But it's always been my sense that if people make that request, you could have, theoretically, you could have a expulsion hearing in executive session. I've seen teachers who have been fired, coaches who have been fired, hold their meetings in public sessions. I feel I've been unfairly judged by members of this board, and I think you need to be, I'm being asked to be held accountable for things and to listen, and I think the same is true. I'm not going to push this issue. This didn't need to happen. I will honor the policy that I put together with the policy committee, CBI, and Alicia did her due diligence as the board chair to reach out and get an opinion. She shared that with me. I'm fine with it. So it's unfortunate that there's that the tenor of this conversation has happened at all. I think I have a right to do that, but clearly I have done this for a long time, and what I thought I had a right to do is not necessarily what this board thinks I should be doing. So reflect that in my evaluation.
Thank you, Jim. Ivy?
wasn't told that we were going in for an investigation. That's not my place.
You know.
My place was to go in and talk with Jim like we have in the past of, you know, all the things that he's accomplished, what goals does he have set in place, what are some things that need to be improved as we have before. That is an evaluation. That is not an investigation. So I'm a little bothered that people would just sit here and make the assumption that this is an investigation. We need to have it in open meetings. So I just want to clarify that because, you know, that's not the impression that I understand that an evaluation is. We're going to find ways that we can work together, make improvements. That's what an employee does, is they talk about how can we best support each other, what things do we need to do to help each other improve the areas, you know, that need to be improved, or what can we do? So that's why I don't know why this whole thing is getting construed that this is an investigation, there's all these allegations and stuff. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Thank you, Ivy. Jim?
Yeah, I want to be clear, crystal clear, for the record, recorded. I did not say it was an investigation or person charged. I read the part of the law that says, may request in writing that the investigation be conducted in open session. I didn't think of it in terms of investigation. The attorney simply said, this is not an investigation. It doesn't meet this criteria. This should be an executive session. I'm not feeling like I'm being investigated or charged with anything.
Thank you, Jim. I did in an email on the 13th state that I had several emails out to the board regarding evals and policies starting the evaluation and desires to discuss in open session versus executive session. And I said we're going to add a discussion at the meeting on Wednesday for the board to talk about the evaluations and whether they should be done open or public. So I did let you know. I feel bad that.
No, you
okay.
did. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Good. I'm glad. Okay.
I wasn't surprised by it.
Okay. Perfect. I didn't want you to be surprised by that because I thought we had that conversation. Seeing no more hands, I think we can move on to our next item on our agenda, which is our public comment section. Are there any public comments at this time, whether on Zoom or in the audience? And future suggested additions to agendas by school board members? Okay, all set with that? Catherine?
I was thinking on our radar when appropriate to sort of put the bow on the conversation about remote days. I think that Tim brought that up. So I don't know if that's something we plan on for next fall. Is it something we're going to do before?
Go ahead.
I think it's a great idea, but I think we incorporated into the survey to get that feedback, and I think it would be hard. But I also will say this with respect to the survey, just sort of planting the seed. You're elected by the community to hear what they have to, and Alicia said this really well, like 2 or 3 months ago, and it's really stuck with me. You are elected to solicit their input, hear what they have to say, but you have inside information, and you're elected to represent them, not do what they tell you to do. It's a totally different thing. This whole, I don't want to talk about parent-teacher conferences, but you're going to get information from me, who is technically your only employee, and from the administrative team, who are people you should be listening to. And you're going to get some conflicting information, and you collectively, as a representative body, have to make that decision. In the same way that if you go to Augusta, those people who are sent to Augusta to represent them at the House of Representatives and the Senate are elected to make decisions based upon the best information they have possible. You guys are all right. This conversation ultimately has been really, really good. I think you heard from Mrs. Randall, you hear the same thing from the other administrators, that we're hearing what people are saying. They want more input, they want to have more say, but ultimately, it's your say. So, whatever that's worth. I think we're going to get feedback. It was a long-winded way to say we're going to get feedback on the remote days, but even after that point, and it's the same, I'm talking about that. The remote days, you will get some feedback, and I think based upon the little bit of feedback we've had so far, you can anticipate a particular outcome. But if that outcome comes back a certain way, it doesn't mean that's what you have to do as a board, because I'm gonna tell you that remote day, and the administrative team will tell you that the remote days work really well for the middle school and high school. And we think it works for a good portion of the grade school too. People have some concerns, we've heard that. But I will say it's a very, very effective tool, and particularly if you look at next year's calendar, it's gonna be very costly if we don't have remote days, if we have to just use snow days and then keep adding them on, because we already have a calendar that goes deep into June before we even look at any days.
Yeah, I echo those comments too, because we actually are starting school after Labor Day next calendar, so we do have a late school year. Any other school board comments? Ivy?
I wasn't here that last meeting because I had a serious medical issue. So it's a little late, but I have not, I have to write it down because, you know, having ADHD, you get an overload of information and you start tongue-tied. I haven't sat well since the May 24th school board meeting, so I've been watching the last several school board recordings to get a better understanding of how we got from point A to point Z with this divide that's being created. Seems there may be some various logical fallacies, both formal and informal, that have been applied in ways that has led to false presumptions being made about boards, parents, teachers, which is extremely bothersome. It was incredibly disheartening to observe a parent feel vilified for providing insightful feedback that is strongly supported by many families within our community. Input that can significantly enhance and strengthen our students' academic progress, especially for those who may be experiencing learning barriers or disadvantages. Where parent-teacher conferences are crucial, not only for these students, but also fostering and maintaining strong relationships between parents and teachers, which greatly benefits the entire school as a whole, as well as for the amazing teachers who were unfairly grouped into an assumed misconception. There are multiple perspectives through which a situation can be viewed, and the way in which each perspective is presented can significantly impact its interpretation, potentially leading to misconceptions which seem clearly in this case. The school board has had the wonderful opportunity to receive valuable feedback from the community on two issues. One was about remote days, and we heard a variety of insightful perspectives on benefits and drawbacks, as well as where changes could be most beneficial. During the May 3rd school board meeting, it was noted that the information shared was thoroughly discussed and taken into consideration, and as a result, a resolution was presented to ensure that we can do better for our students, which is essential. The second piece of the feedback was about the second parent-teacher conferences, and we heard a variety of insightful perspectives on the pros and cons, as well as where changes could be most beneficial. It was also clearly noted during the discussion and mutually agreed upon by the board that parent-teacher conferences and teacher development days are of the utmost importance, and in exchange, an idea was proposed that would have supported both of these fundamental options without affecting either, which was also supported by the board. Following that discussion, I felt positive that we would receive alternative ideas for making something work that would be beneficial for everyone. However, it appears that discussions that took place between the meeting took a different turn and unfortunately did not reflect the same outlook on working towards a positive outcome for the situation as it did for the first one. So what changed? What changed was clearly the result of the April 24th school board meeting, where fallacious statements seemed to have been made that have led to the results of a parent being vilified and mistakenly accused of creating a divide between parents and teachers, students being unfairly placed, and then these are my feelings, so I just wanted to clarify that real quick, I'm sorry. Creating a divide between parents and teachers, students being unfairly placed in the middle of assumed assumptions and misguidance, administrators feeling on the defensive, and the board receiving misled backlash of accusations of divisiveness, overstepping boundaries, fault for pursuing outcomes of teachers, and being told publicly that we were ethically targeted with several complaints that were filed against us without due process, which matters are assumed confidential until then. I've learned from watching the recordings how incredibly committed our teachers are and how we can all collaborate to foster stronger supportive relationships that will better support students' academic success. Unfortunately, instead of being viewed through an ethical lens and serving as a means of improving two isolated situations as intended, the two shared example situations was rather taken and repeated under the assumed assumptions, leading discussion to believe it was all the teachers. School board meetings are an open public discussion and the only opportunity to have a diverse, open discussion with members who represent all important positions within our school district, allowing us to work collaboratively to improve our school's environments and relationships. Diversity in discussions from various perspectives is a valuable asset, one that greatly benefits our district rather than being used to drive wedges, tensions, and separations. Additionally, we should never feel required to disclose our disabilities or atypical personalities in order to defend ourselves against assertions. This does not reflect upon us as a team. It is clear that everyone has a vested interest in ensuring the academic success of all our students, and I am confident that we can learn from this experience and use it to strengthen the foundations of our school. The biggest advantage we can provide is to work together as one, leading by example and illuminating our school's values of respect, compassion, integrity, responsibility, and cooperation. I also wanted to share something from the Maine School Board Association Handbook, page 114, chapter 8.2, under what an elected official means. It states, as an elected official, I think it touches on some of what Jim just shared, as an elected school board member, you are part of a representative government. In order to represent your constituents, you need to actively seek input, listen carefully to all viewpoints, and keep your finger on the pulse of your community. A board member who simply votes with the majority on every issue, or according to the wishes of the loudest constituent group, is probably not serving his or her students and community well in the long run. On page 114, 115, chapter 8283, under the importance of informing the public, which states board members not only have the obligation to listen to the public, they have an obligation to inform public opinion. The board should also request copies of communications, suggestions, ideas to improve our school communities through newsletters, informational, which are greatly shared between all of us, and other creative means. The more knowledge people have of the schools and the more accessible schools are, the more likely people are to be proud of them and to support their needs.
Thank you, Ivy.
You-
Jim?
You want to, what do you want to do with that?
Well, I just wanted to share because I did not
I know,
sit well
why?
after that meeting. There was a lot of things said, there was a lot of misconceptions, there was a lot of stuff stated, and it was hard to
Do you
swallow.
want to share that letter with my minutes? Do you want to attach that to the minutes or not?
I don't know, I have to fix some of there.
Monica? I was going to suggest that that be included in the record. That's your choice, Ivy.
You can,
I don't know, I need to-
yeah, think about it.
Everybody in this room has huge hearts. And if we're working, in this person belongs to this person, this group belongs to this person, and not working in collaboration, I don't feel that we're meeting the needs of our students, our teachers, and the most vital parts of our community.
Thank you. Any other board comments? I neglected to thank Jay and Joel and Alexis for our tour today. We were able to, Tim and I were able to tour the high school and see a lot of the things that have been worked on and fixed that we've discussed in our board meetings. And so that was really nice to be able to see that, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. So thank you. And I want to end on a positive note, that I really appreciate all of the activities and things that have been happening. There has been a lot of positivity at the schools. I think the kids are just thrilled to be in, all of the sports and plays, and you guys, the 4th grade I think had gone to the Portland Symphony Orchestra. I mean, these are big opportunities for these little guys, and so it's pretty amazing. And yes, we are wrapping up as a board for this year, and we are
losing one of our members, and I think it's important to honor his service that he has contributed to our board. And so thank you, David, for being involved. And go ahead with your comments. Close it on the sports.
Read me like a book. All right. Everyone seems like they've been having a ball with sports. Sport pun intended. Everything seems to be going great. Both boys and girls lacrosse, baseball, softball. I haven't had or seen any athletes this year been like, dang, we're having a bad season. Everyone seems to be doing great, or at least having fun with their sports. So that's the number one thing. Boys tennis, we won today for the senior match, which was nice, which is why we were late. We were waiting for our team. And feels good to win, gosh darn it. As far as my parting remarks for the school board goes, think that we all need to be just nicer to each other and not drag out some topics. That's just to cover it quickly. Just get to the point sometimes. And other than that, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Dufour, for allowing me to be one of your first acts as a principal to get me here. And I have to shout out to Amelie for helping me the first year. And good luck mentoring Abby next year, Joseph. And this will be your seat next year. So thank you, everyone.
You get your choice. What do you want to say?
All right, I moved, I feel like do you have anything to hand out? No. Yeah. Actually,
Can I hand out something?
Will you make a guest appearance at our next board meeting?
The next one?
I know you're graduating, but
When is it?
June 6th, is it?
Yeah.
We'll see. I may be climbing Katahdin at that point. I know I have some plans after graduation.
Well,
I'll check in.
in full disclosure, Dave, we want to do something for you.
Okay.
I forgot
June
that was your last,
June 5th.
yeah, I forgot that was your last meeting.
It snuck up on us.
I know they do an amazing community day at the high school where all the students are in the gymnasium, and maybe that would be enough.
If you want to surprise me, then I don't care one way or the other. I do have a question for Mr. Stone real quick. Is sports awards night figured out yet?
Yeah.
When is it?
It's the week after you graduate.
Okay, I've been curious.
Your coach has the information.
She does? Yeah, she's had some.
Interesting days?
yeah, feel bad.
It's the 10th, David.
Huh?
It's the
10th?
It's actually
Perfect,
2 weeks after you get out.
perfect. I should be back to my gallivanting. May I hand out something?
Absolutely.
I feel like it fits me. Joseph helped me pick these out, as in we had leftovers. The Scooby snacks. Enact the kid in you, have some Scooby snacks. Or if not, give them to your kids. Do whatever with them.
Joseph.
Draw two.
There's dummies.
Joseph ate his on the ride home.
Yeah.
We had a bunch earlier, and on Monday. We were going ham.
Oh my God, dummies.
Yeah, so enjoy the Scooby snacks. Embrace your inner kid.
Thank you.
That
Thank
is
you,
all.
David. Any other board comments?
That is all.
You sure, Joseph?
Not following that.
Yeah, how do you follow that up?
I'm really gonna miss our sports updates. I hope you have big shoes to fill.
Size 12.
Okay, well, we don't have any more board comments at this time. Well, we will enter into executive session. We will vote to do that. But everyone else is free to leave.
There will be no